when we look at something like this, what we want to do is we can factor this to figure out what the restrictions are. We want to know what the factors are, because any factor equal to 0 in the denominator makes the whole thing equal to 0. Now we don't need to factor the numerator, but we're going to. We're going to plus 3 x plus 6. And here we're going to have x plus 5, x plus 6. Okay, so we have restricted values at x not equal to -5. Okay, I'm just going to maybe color code this. So I'm going to let that be x not equal to -5. And the other one, I'm just going to color code that as x not equal to -6. Now, why would I differentiate those? Well, this is one where these cancel out. So here we're dividing by 0, okay, and we're probably going to get a vertical asymptote there. Here we're dividing by 0, but we have a 0 divided by 0. Now that's slightly different than dividing some number by 0. 0 divided by 0 actually is going to give us something else. So when we cancel these, we're going to see something different. Okay, so go ahead and graph these and pause the video and come back and graph this and see what's happening at that point. So I'm going to give you a pause, and I want you to go to your graphing tool, graph it, and come back. Okay, for these ones here, when I graph this, so that x plus 5 at -5, we are getting what we kind of expected, was a vertical asymptote, x equals -5. Okay, and we end up with this graph. So it looks like it crosses at, we have a 0 at -3, so it kind of goes down like this. Let me just double check that. So it's going to look like this, isn't it? Okay, it's going to come like this, and the other part of the graph looks like that. Okay, so certainly at x equals -5, we have our vertical asymptote. I'm just going to make sure that's color coded so we can see very clearly at that factor. Okay, at that factor, we're getting a vertical asymptote. Okay, so there's our vertical asymptote showing up, but at -6, it doesn't look like anything's happening. Now, if we actually look close enough, if you try to get your cursor on that -6, you'll see that at -6, we get some, you should get an undefined. Now it's hard to move your cursor to that point, but basically what's happening is we're getting a hole. This 0 divided by 0 is creating a hole in the graph, because essentially 0 divided by 0 is kind of 1. I shouldn't really say it's 1, but it doesn't affect our calculations, because really they just cancel each other out. Whatever's happening here cancels with whatever's happening here. We're just not allowed to, so it's just going to behave like this graph with a vertical asymptote here. Okay, so it's just going to behave really like this portion. Okay, that's really what's happening. That's going to behave like that. But the only thing is, there's still the restriction. Okay, because remember we had to state the restriction before we cancel, and the restriction, we still can't go to -6. And what's happening at -6 is a hole. Okay, so for this -5, this is a vertical asymptote. And at x equals -6, where they cancel, we end up with a hole. Okay, really just follows the graph, and all of a sudden we just get a hole. Okay, and if you follow your cursor on there, you'll see that it gives you an undefined value right at that point, and that actually is a hole. So this is something we can generalize. Okay, so I'm going to write this out. When factors cancel, we get a hole in the graph. Okay, when they don't cancel, so when the denominator doesn't cancel, okay, remember the numerator doesn't matter, the denominator doesn't cancel, we get a vertical asymptote. Sorry, asymptote. Okay.